Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in again to another episode of Owning Your Sexual Self. And it just seems like we're just in the mood for pelvic floor conversations these last couple episodes. So I at the beginning of this year, I said, you know what, there's some like really big name guests out there that I would love to have on the show. And so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna shoot my shot and send out some messages and see who says yes. And lo and behold, today is one of those people. We have on the show today Sara Reardon, who is coming from all the way from New Orleans today to talk with us. And I have been following her for so long. If you don't know, if you want to give her a follow on Instagram, her Instagram handle is the Vagina Whisperer. She has some great content on pelvic floor health for every age, talking about menopause, perimenopause, like all the things like women related for pelvic floors. And she has her new book coming out called Floored, and that is releasing June 10th. So, this episode, we're going to talk a lot about this book that's coming up. And I hope that you are able to pre order your copy to support the guest on our show today. So, a little bit more about Sara. Since 2007, she has been caring for people's pelvic floors as a board certified pelvic floor physical therapist. She is the founder of VHive, which is an online pelvic floor workout platform for pregnancy, postpartum, menopause, painful sex, and pelvic floor strengthening. As the Vagina Whisperer on Instagram and TikTok, she has hundreds of thousands of followers, myself included. And Sara lives in New Orleans again with her husband and her two sons. And her book coming out on June 10th of this year, 2025, is called Floored, A Woman's Guide to Pelvic Floor Health at Every Age and Stage. I love this. I will definitely be getting my copy. I'm very excited to have Sara on the show today. So, without further ado, let's welcome our guest. Hi, Sara. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Hey, Rachel, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You were just a busy bee over there touring all over to get the word out about your book, Floored, coming out on June 10th. I'm very excited for you. What got you down this avenue of like, hey, I'm gonna write a book about this?
It's so wild. I've been a pelvic floor physical therapist for 18 years. I feel like a dinosaur now in this field because I've been doing it from the very start of my career. And, things have just kind of gradually progressed from starting my Instagram account, The Vagina Whisperer, in 2017. And then I started the VHive, my workout platform, in 2020, like during COVID, so people could have some kind of at-home workouts to do. And then in 2022 or 23, I think I just received a cold email from someone who followed me on Instagram. And she was like, "Hey, I'm a publisher at HarperCollins, and I really am interested in your work and think that you would be, interesting to write a book and about pelvic floor health because there's not a lot out there." And I was like, "Oh, wow. Like that was not on my like goals in life." And so I, really met with her a couple times, met with some agents, and then I had a clinic at the time in New Orleans where I live, and I had my online workout platform. And I was like, I can't take writing a book on top of this as well. Like I just was like already stretched really thin. So I actually sold my clinic
Oh, wow.
to, I know, I sold my practice to two therapists who were working for me at the time. And now I work for them. I still see clients and I work for them. And they're so amazing to kind of free up the space to write the book. So I spent a year doing it. And then about a year later, it's about to hit the shelf. So it's really exciting.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Like, what a leap of faith to take on that and to take on yourself. That is, yeah, just a lot of admiration for you for doing that.
It's so funny because I don't even think of it as like a leap of faith. I'm kind of sometimes you just feel more like backed into a corner and you're kind of like, okay, I've got to make a choice here. Which way do I go? And so, I also think that people, all of this, I can't say I had this master plan of like, how are we going to make people more aware about pelvic floor therapy or help them with sexual pain or intimacy? It's much more of like people are coming and asking. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we need this resource for them. So let's kind of create and develop it.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And being on the therapy side of it too, like I mentioned, the podcast alone is such a great resource for people. And so I love to have episodes that really like niche down on something specific. So we've had, as I said, like other public floor physical therapists on the show, but with you having the platform of VHive and talking more about workout based stuff, I would really love to kind of go down that avenue a little bit more because I think that's something that comes up so often for people that are avid in, let's say, the workout space, or they're runners and or weightlifting or hit classes, like more high intensity things. You're maybe I'm assuming here, but like I'm noticing or have noticed in the past that their tendency more is to have like tighter pelvic floors. And so often in the language, it's like, do your Kegels. But we're learning
Right.
like that is not the answer for every single person. So I'd love to, yeah, like, can you tell us more around like workout based stuff in pelvic floor? Like, what do we need to know there?
You're so right, Rachel. I think that the narrative since we were young women has been like, do your Kegels, tighten your vagina, suck in your core. And we've spent decades doing that. And we also live in a day and time where we are really overstimulated. We're not moving enough. We're anxious. I mean, I feel all of these things myself. And I think that that tends to kind of stay in our bodies where we hold on to tension. And that can also kind of settle into your pelvic floor and create pelvic floor tension as well. So, the V Hive workouts, during COVID times, a colleague and I created a pregnancy program. And it was really like a lot of pregnant women didn't want to go into clinics during that time. And so we said, how can we educate them on how to take care of their pregnant bodies, how to adjust and modify their workouts to prevent pelvic floor issues, and also how to prepare for birth? Because we were doing a lot of this in clinics and they didn't want to come in. Or, pelvic floor therapy was getting more awareness and they didn't have therapists in their town. There's like less than 10,000 pelvic floor therapists in the United States, and there's like hundreds of millions of women. And so there's just not enough of us to treat everyone. And so we created an online pregnancy program. And then after that, I created a postpartum program. And then I created the painful sex and pelvic floor tension program. And the reason is because so often, so many people think like, I need to strengthen my pelvic floor, but many, many of us need to release tension, relax our pelvic floors. But again, nobody educates us on how to do this. And it also takes a lot of resources to see a pelvic floor therapist in person. It also takes a lot of courage and vulnerability. And sometimes I think we just need to meet women where they are. They're not all ready to kind of come into a clinic and meet one on one. So, how can we give them options to start self treatment at home? And that's really what the pelvic floor relaxation series does with walking them through everything of like different types of lubricants, different sexual positions, how to use vaginal dilators to relax the pelvic floor muscles, stretching and breathing routines to quiet the nervous system and release the pelvic floor tension. So, pretty much everything we do in our clinics and just something that people can follow along at home.
Yeah, which I love that you said that, like meeting women where they're at, because I think for the women that one first thing that popped in my head is like women that aren't going to put themselves first, right? They're so worried about taking care of everybody else that when it's time for them to have that doctor's appointment, something like pelvic health pain or painful sex, right, isn't even going to come up. And I hear that a lot with my clients too. It's like, well, it wasn't really that big of an issue, or we're not really having sex that much in our marriage or in our relationship. So it's like, once a month, essentially, I have to suffer with this thing. But it's like, no, like because pelvic health is linked to so many other aspects of the overall body too. And so, yeah, I love this, like being accessible and also just, yeah, like maybe for me, like I don't love my primary care physician, like my gynecologist, every time I go in there, there's a new person that I'm seeing because they're not keeping the same clinicians there. So it's like, if I don't have that relationship, I might not ask them or feel comfortable asking them the questions that, are related to this. So yeah, for someone like, especially in this day and age, I can go online, I can find you, I can go to your link in bio, find your programs, do it from the comfort of my own home. Like, sign me up, you
Yeah,
know?
I know. I love hearing that. And that's really the goal. And I think that, I mean, nothing will take the place of in-person therapy. Like, I love hands-on treatment. I love going in and seeing my clients. But the fact of the matter is it's not always an option for folks. I think one of the other things is gynecologists are not trained on how to handle sexual pain. Like, you really have to kind of specialize in that area. And it's much more kind of obstetrics based or kind of annual examinations. But it's not like, hey, they're not even asking, or what is your frequency of sexual activity? Is there any discomfort? Why are you not having it? Like, is it a libido issue? Is it a pain issue? And so the research is very clear. If medical providers don't ask, we're less likely to tell them. And even if we do tell them, we're just not even given options a lot. And so I think that what's been great about social media, as much there's as many pitfalls as there are like amazing things about it, is that it's really kind of given women some awareness that like, hey, I don't have to deal with this, even if it's once a month.
Mhm.
Like I really believe that we all deserve great sex in our lifetime. And I think it helps us feel great in our bodies, and I don't want to have to suffer through something once a month. Like, and if I am suffering through something once a month, I don't want to even do it. Like I don't need more obstacles in the way of not having sex with my husband. Like I'm tired, there are kids, sick kids. I've, like I'm traveling, but I don't want pain to be one of those variables. And I think that it is for a lot of women.
Yeah. And I think like taking that empowering approach of like if you are having painful sex or painful experiences, like you have control over that. There are things that you can do. There are answers or ways to solve this for yourself.
Yeah. Well,
So,
you know, one of the things I will say that a lot I really want to kind of clarify is that I think it's unfortunate that I feel like it feels like it falls on us as the person with the vagina to fix this. And you know, I will say I actually have a lot of partners coming to reach out to me and saying, "Hey, I think my wife has this, whether it's vaginismus or vulvodynia or, pelvic pain or something like that." And so they want to help. They want to be solution oriented, and so they're kind of looking for answers. But you know, it is something because it is part of our body that we do have the ability to address it or not. But I think that the other thing is that your pelvic floor is not just for sex, your vagina is not just for sex. I mean, if you have pelvic floor tension, it can contribute to issues with bladder emptying, urinary tract infections, frequent urination, urinary leakage, constipation, hemorrhoids, prolapse. I mean, the list of things goes on. And so it's really much more about function, less, not just about sex, but it's really more about function as well. And that people don't realize that pelvic floor tension can contribute to other pelvic floor problems.
mhm. Yeah, and how it's been taught to me, it's like your pelvic floor is essentially this hammock that is holding up all of these very important organs inside. So as you said, it's not just about that sexual performance, or again sexual pain. It's like yeah, it has a very very important role, and so
Yeah.
be healthy, you want it to be doing its job.
Yeah. And you know, the thing is, again, in this field, 18 years, I've worked with tens of thousands of women and tens of thousands of vulvas and vaginas and pelvic floors. And it's an intimate part of the body. But to me, I'm like, this is like working with an elbow or a knee. I mean, it's just a body part, and so it's really muscles. And so sometimes when we kind of pull back and we're like, oh, these are just muscles. Like I get a knot in my shoulder and I just rub it out and then my headaches get better. It's
Mhm,
not that different. But
mhm.
I think that the longer we let it go on, it becomes kind of layered with complexity of other kind of psychosocial factors. And so I think that the sooner somebody is able to kind of address the physical piece, because there's a lot of puzzle pieces that go into sexual pain and dysfunction. As soon as they're able to address the physical piece, I think that that is it's less likely to get more severe.
Yeah. And from like again, thinking back to like painful sex, I'm curious, like what do you wish that people knew more of from the pelvic floor perspective?
So even just to kind of pull back a little bit, so the pelvic floor, as you mentioned, is this hammock of muscles that sits at the bottom of your pelvis. So we all imagine that kind of bony ring that we see at the base of a skeleton, and it attaches to our spine. And at the bottom of that ring is a floor of muscles, your pelvic floor, and it supports your organs. So your uterus, which holds a growing baby, your ovaries, your bladder, which holds urine, your bowels, which hold poop, they all rest inside of there, kind of like a basket. And then the pelvic floor muscles have three openings, one for the anal opening, one for the urethral opening where urine exits, and one for the vagina, which is plays a role in menstruation, vaginal intercourse, vaginal birth. And so I think what I want women to know is that we often think of these muscles getting weak, like if we leak urine, which can also happen with tension, actually. But,
Mhm.
if with aging after birth, but they can often be tight, as you mentioned. And that tension prevents entry into the vagina. It prevents comfortable intercourse. It can feel painful, bruisey. It can affect orgasms, like the inability to have an orgasm or painful orgasms. So it's kind of complex, and I think the sexual function is one area that can manifest. But again, often I see people with sexual pain, and I'm like, okay, tell me about your pooping, and they're like, oh, I've had constipation since I was a kid. I'm like, tell me about your periods, and they're like, oh, I've got painful periods, and I can't use tampons. And so we start to see these other kind of areas pop up that they didn't even realize were connected to their pelvic floors. Like their sexual pain is a symptom, but there's a root to it. And I think the challenge with our medical system is that we always want to like fix the problem. Like, oh, here, use a lubricant or put Botox in the vagina. But I'm like, let's take a step back to see like what's causing that tension. It could literally be how you're working out. It could be how you sit. It could be unresolved trauma. I mean, there's so many things, but I think we always need to make sure we get to the root cause of it, and working with a pelvic floor therapist can is a role in that.
Mhm.
And I think that the other thing is it's never too late. I mean, you may have had sexual pain for years, and I'm like, it's never too late. I've worked with women in their 70s, women after breast cancer treatment, young women who've never been sexually active, and they want to get pregnant, and now they're like, they're literally inserting turkey basters in their vaginas to inseminate sperm. And I'm like, okay, there's a better way. And so I think it's just having a comfortable place to address these issues is really important. And I actually think we deserve this. Like what makes us think that we don't, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and from like the pleasure and confidence side of this, like with your clients, what are you seeing? How is that shifting for them after they're going through pelvic floor therapy? Are you seeing more sexual confidence, more sexual pleasure on the other end of this?
Yeah, I do, and I think it's really like one of the most rewarding parts of this. I always say they're like, people are always thanking me for being their therapist or giving them resources. I'm like, I get as much out of this as you do. Like, I find it so incredibly rewarding and it makes me feel good when people get better.
Mhm.
But I think that when something is uncomfortable or we have a traumatic experience, we tend to kind of distance ourselves from it. So it's really, I think the first step is helping women connect with this part of their body. I'm like, use a mirror, like look at your vulva, find the vaginal opening. Like more men have probably seen this part of your body than you've seen yourself, or women, whomever your partner may be. So I'm like, you really just connecting with that part of it and just seeing it is a step one. I think that the other pieces are I'm a big fan of self-exploration. So I'm like, it's hard to communicate with another person what you like or what feels good when you aren't aware of yourself. So explore on your own. You can use vibrators, toys, fingers, lubricants, whatever you want. But I think that that helps you kind of just connect without this kind of performance anxiety piece. And then also some of it is really therapeutic because you can see gains when you're doing therapy. It's a big jump to be like, I don't want to have sex at all, to be like, okay, now I'm having sex with my partner regularly. So we use these things called vaginal dilators, which look like tampons of different sizes. And we coach women, and I do this in my VHI videos as well, on how to insert them into the vagina, how to relax, how to breathe, how to move their legs in different positions while something's inserted in the vagina. And we want that stimulus that to be non-painful. So we want them to start associating no pain with something related to the pelvic floor or vagina. And then you can increase the size of the dilators. And I think it's exciting for women to be like, oh my gosh, I am making gains because they can't tell. Like sex, no sex, or pain with sex is a big jump. But when you start to see these gradual progressions, I think it's really encouraging. And there are two really, I think some of my most favorite stories is that I saw one woman when I was working in Dallas and she had never had an orgasm. And I worked with her for a long time and she kind of started working more on self-stimulation. And, I'm like, take the partner out of it. Like, just do your own thing. And I remember there was a day, probably after maybe 3 or 4 months of seeing her, and she sent me flowers to the office and she said, I just had my first O day. And so every year she sent me flowers
Oh my
on her O day because she was like, I never thought that this was possible, And it was just so awesome to have her feel proud of herself and connected with herself and good, about an area of her body that she had felt so bad. And so like she was underperforming or something. And there was another patient in New Orleans that I saw when I first started practicing who had severe vulvodynia and pelvic pain, never been able to have intercourse. And after I saw her for over a year, and she had a kind of a lot of other medical stuff that we were working through. But after she finished seeing me and she was, able to have sex with her partner pain free, and she would sent me this message and she said, like, I've never felt like more of a woman, And I think that I don't realize these connections for them, but when they express them, I'm like, wow, this is really powerful. And so I just love that they're able to feel more of who they are.
God. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I truly, again, like to have that relationship with a patient and for them to feel comfortable with you, there's so that is so much more powerful than getting, yeah, oh, have a glass of wine, oh, you need to use lube, right? Like you're actually taking the time to hear people and work with them.
Yeah, I mean, I love this job, and I
Mhm.
also think it's, people always ask me like, how are you so vulnerable on social media? Because I'm like, oh, my marriage is struggling right now because I'm so busy, or like motherhood's so hard, But I'm like, I'm asking people to be really vulnerable with me day in and day out, and to share their intimate secrets. I think if we all just kind of show up as human, you just kind of break down some of those barriers, and you can start kind of just connecting. And I think that that's an important piece of being a practitioner in this field.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we know, with pelvic floor, right? Like your pelvic floor shifts across the lifespan, whether it be pregnancy, postpartum, menopause. But I'm curious for you, are there any specific myths that you encounter around aging on the pelvic floor that you are really passionate about debunking or kind of like setting the record straight here.
Totally. I mean, I think, and with the book Floored, I went wide. People are like, why don't you just write one about birth or menopause or sex? And I said, because there's no basics. Like nobody's giving us a basics for our pelvic floor. We maybe when we're young women get a little bit of period education. If we're lucky, and depending on what state we live in, we maybe get a little bit of sex ed, but it's like sperm meets egg. Nobody's giving us pelvic floor education. So
Yeah.
like, what are the 101s that we need to know for our body? And if you're experiencing problems, like here are some things at home to fix it. So I think with aging, it's really common that we just say, oh, you're going to leak a little bit when you get older, or you're more likely to have prolapse. And the reason for that is with aging, our estrogen levels and testosterone levels start to decline mid 30s to 40s. And what estrogen and testosterone do, testosterone helps build up muscles. So when we have less testosterone, we have less kind of tone and strength of our pelvic floor just physiologically. And then estrogen lubricates the vagina. It, plumps up the labia. It also creates tone in the pelvic floor and contributes to collagen. Collagen is, we think about that for our face and our hair, but we also have collagen that needs to be helping support tissues in our pelvic floor. So with the decline in those hormones, we see pelvic floor weakness. We see what they call genitourinary syndrome of menopause, which is more frequent urination. It can feel like you have bladder infections. You're waking more at night to pee. You have painful sex. You have dryness, weaker orgasms, urinary leakage. I mean, I'm making menopause and perimenopause sound really scary, but I think that we often tell women you don't need to do anything until after menopause, and I'm like, that is not true. So there's been a lot of discovery made recently that a lot of the old studies about hormone replacement were debunked. So we are kind of recommending if you're comfortable with it, again, I think we need to meet people where they are. If people are open to using, systemic hormones like a estrogen patch or testosterone gel, whatever, that's on them. That's up to them, but they can be helpful. But I am a big fan of using proactively early a vaginal moisturizer. So I use something called Medicine Mama. It's like a vulva balm. But you can use, you know, coconut oil. You can use, you don't need to use a regular lotion. It needs to be something specific for the vulva because you have to maintain the pH. I'm also a fan of using a lubricant. I like a water soluble lubricant because you likely will have less lubrication. And this isn't because you're less aroused, it's just because your hormones are changing. And I do encourage folks to kind of proactively start working on their pelvic floor. If they don't have tension, then you can work on some strengthening issues. And, these are kind of the workouts that I have in the V Hive. I created a perimenopause program, but a lot of it is you're lifting weights in the gym. They tell us do all your strength training for osteoporosis and etc. But you need to be pulling your pelvic floor in with those workouts, like pre-contracting your pelvic floor with every repetition, and you'll gain muscle strength through doing that. And so you can build it into workouts you're already doing. But I really look at perimenopause as like this yellow light, this runway of 10 years where we can optimize our pelvic floor before menopause starts, which is menopause is when you haven't had a period for 1 year. And then you need to kind of have ongoing conditioning for it. Kind of like you brush and floss your teeth regularly, you need to do the same thing for your pelvic floor. But it is important, I think, that we address the changes with aging because it's 100% of women will go through menopause, and yet we're giving them no pelvic floor education. And so I think that it's an undertreated issue for perimenopausal and menopausal women.
Yeah, I remember from my program at U of M, what we were taught around pelvic floor is moisturize, stretch, lubricate, like three
I
important
love
things
that.
to know. And so, yeah, thank you for those recommendations. I'd love to, I can either find links or if you have links directly to them, I'd love to include them in the show notes for
Oh,
people.
sure, absolutely.
That,
And these are, I mean, and the thing is once people find these resources, like I think it can feel overwhelming to add something more to our list, like, oh my gosh, even a stretch or even an exercise. But they're really small habits that if we just build them in, they become automatic. And so I kind of like to say, like, just pick one thing, like just one thing that you start, like using a vulva balm after a shower, or, don't go to the grocery store and get like an yucky like old school lube, like get a good lube, like that makes a big difference, use a dilator once a week or once a month to kind of just keep the vaginal canal open. So there are these things that I think we can do, but to your point, like you receive this training, but like gynecologists aren't telling women this.
I know.
And now they're seeing women less and less like, oh, you don't have to come back for 3 years to get a pap smear. But I'm like, wait, but this isn't just about checking for cervical cancer. Like, we need to be doing more for women and their pelvic floors than just like screening for disease.
Mhm. Yeah, in my program, like it was for, so I did sex therapy and sexuality education. So we had a lot of gynecologists, midwives, PAs, PTs, like all these different medical professions coming in to get this more, again, this niche down training in sex education because they weren't taught that in their just regular program for their training. It's like, and that was a conversation a lot that came up. It's like, if you want this, if you want to be able to help your patients in this way when these things are coming up, you really have to seek out additional education to get more extensive training in that. Um,
I love that. I love that so much. This makes me interested in doing it. And so good on you because we need you out there. We need folks who kind of really specialize in this area. And it's hard. I mean, I think gynecologists are like, we're so busy, we can't do it. I'm like, okay, but this is part of the space. And so until it's really integrated into pelvic floor or physical therapy education or gynecological education, like we do have to have these resources, or at least have folks like you that we can refer to because we don't specialize in those things.
Absolutely. And I like the collaboration with it too, right? A lot of pelvic floor PTs here in Michigan will refer clients or patients to me for then the more mental side of it, bringing in the sex therapy, but in collaboration while they're still doing pelvic floor PT, and then vice versa. I think pretty much, I would say 90% of my female patients that are coming in with whatever they're coming in for, pelvic floor PT is generally a part of our conversation to explore, or even just like something like hormone testing. The amount of women that I have other clients that have never had their hormones tested in their 30s, 40s, 50s, right? It's like,
Yeah. Well,
wow.
and there's conversation now about not testing hormones. And I'm like, well, how are we making decisions?
Yeah.
How are you were just throwing darts at the dartboard? Like that's medicine? And I'm like, they're like, oh, well, it varies month to month. I'm like, okay, pick a day of the month and repeat. Like I'm like, we've got to be doing more than just guessing. And so I'm a fan of hormone testing for myself, for my clients. And to your point, like it's tricky to find folks who we're going to work well with your clients and really specialize in that area. And I tell people like I am the physical therapist, and a lot of them will be like, it feels like we're in therapy here. Like this is a therapy couch. I'm like, but I really stay in my lane. I'm like,
Mhm.
I having a wonderful therapist who specializes in pelvic pain or sexual health is a gem. I'm like, we cannot make gains in what I do if we don't work in parallel with somebody like you. And so I'm super grateful that you're out there and really specializing in this.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's just there's too many connections where it's like, but I'm just the physical piece, and I know that we need to pull in other practitioners. I mean, and again, the research is very clear. A multimodal kind of therapeutic approach is best, which means like we need a sex therapist, we need a medical doctor, we need a PT. Like those are all important pieces.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I want to shift gears because, as I said, like I want to really talk a little bit more about your book. It's very exciting, coming out a month from tomorrow. Actually, we're recording this live May 9th. So June 10th, the book is coming out. And I know you spoke about it earlier, right? Like somebody reached out to you, sort of planted that seed. But I'm curious, like, was there any particular story or moment that you had that realization come through of like this book needs to exist?
Oh my gosh, every day. I mean, I think that every message I get on social media of I am experiencing this. I mean, women are searching for solutions, and we're going to social media. Me in a dancing vulva costume, for like our health advice. I'm like, okay, this is where we are in the world. And I do have a big social media following, but I think that following is a testament that women want and need this information, and we're not getting it in our health education. We're not getting it in our medical care, and we deserve it, and we're curious, and we want more. We deserve more. So, I think for the book, again, I kind of like think like I've always been, everything I do goes back to the mission of how are we going to better educate women about their bodies? How are we going to help move the needle in the medical system to start to stop ignoring pelvic health care? And
Mhm.
how can we make this information accessible for women worldwide?
Mhm.
And so when an opportunity comes, it's like always back, like, does this do that? Does this kind of help broaden the message? And I think that when I had the opportunity to create the book, it was like, yes, this absolutely does that. And, I don't we don't always want to go to social media. Sometimes we take breaks from social media. So I'm like, we shouldn't have to like doom scroll on my feed to find out the best lubes or how to use vaginal dilators. I think that we need this to be in a place that it lives. I dove very deep into the research. I actually hired a research assistant um, at Carnegie Mellon, and she kind of and I worked together to like just get all of the most up-to-date research. So I was backing up everything and kind of really having the evidence to support what I was using in my to support what I was writing in my book. I folded in patient stories because I think women often feel very alone. They feel very isolated. They feel very ashamed. And so just knowing that other women have experienced this, are experiencing this, I think can be very welcome and kind of make them feel a lot less alone. And then I also tried to make it a little funny, because I think that
You
it's
got
just my personality. I know that I'm just like, we can also bring levity to these issues. We don't have to make it so medical or intense. And so, and I even share my own personal journey with birth and postpartum recovery. And, I have painful sex every blue moon because of my workouts. And so I keep this little trigger point wand in my nightstand. So I know when I have like that deep pain with intercourse, I'm like, okay, I know it's this muscle. I have to go in and release it. So even somebody who specializes in this field, like you can still have pelvic floor issues, but I just want you to have the tools to be able to navigate them.
yeah.
So, yeah, it took me about, I would say 9 months to write the book. And I rented an office outside of my house so I could kind of take a break from my kids. I worked on the weekends. I woke up at 5 a.m. every day of the week. I mean, I really grinded to get this on paper because I'm a PT. This was kind of a new space for me. And when it was done, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just did that. When you see it all put together, you're like, wait, I wrote that. So
Uh,
it does feel really good to kind of be putting it out in the world now.
yeah. Oh, I have chills. Like my yeah, hearing that, like, that is amazing. I know we've not met before, but like truly, Sarah, I'm very proud of you and the work that it takes. And yeah, again, like being out of your space that you're in day to day and stepping into this, but then taking the time that you needed to be able to carve out that time and make it a priority. And oh my God, 9 months, like
I
that's
know.
the grand scheme of thing. That's pretty damn fast to get this thing out there.
I know. Well, I also work on deadlines. So when they were like, I had over a year, but then I just kept kicking the can, and they were like, "Okay, we need to see some chapters, Sarah." So it's like, "Okay, after Mardi Gras, I'll get some to you." So the deadlines definitely kind of pushed me. But I have a great partner. He's super supportive, and I've got, he helped out a ton with just, I mean, even now I'm traveling and he's, with our kids all the time. And so, but it's really funny because I've got two boys. I don't have any girl daughters, obviously, but a friend of mine, we were at a Mardi Gras parade a couple months ago, and her daughter, who's in fourth grade, was like, "Oh, Miss Sarah doesn't have any daughters, and she's the vagina whisperer. That's a missed opportunity for her, like to educate other daughters, like other girls, about this." And I said, "Yeah, but I've got two sons who know so much about the female body and know so much about their bodies, where they're like, they see a tampon string hanging out and they're like, 'Hey, mom, what's that?' And I'm like, or they see me bleeding once a month during my period. They're like, 'Does it hurt?' And so
Oh,
just educating any two humans, but mine are boys, about how a woman's body works, how the female body works. I'm like, I hope that they feel really comfortable in their skin, but also it's kind of looking at the female body as it's not something just sexual or it's not something just for having babies. It's kind of this amazing kind of very natural cyclical rhythm that we have that they understand, like they know that girls have periods and they know what a tampon is and they know what a vulva is and they still think my vulva costume looks like a hot dog. But I think for them it's also nice to kind of just do this for them even though they're boys that they see how important this work is to support women.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, starting again at that young age, and one thing I've learned from having guests on too is like everybody has a pelvic floor. So it's not
Everyone.
all the language is generally around women and pelvic floor health for women, but it like males have them too.
Men have them. I mean, even kids, like so many kids struggle with constipation and bedwetting, and these are pelvic floor problems. And so, like, teaching my kids, put the stool under your feet when you're pooping. I keep these little twirly straws in their bathroom so they can blow through them when they're pooping so they don't have to strain. And so even just educating them, like, don't go to the bathroom just in case. Also, don't hold it too long. If we can teach kids these things, and I think that was one big kind of takeaway I hope comes from the book is like, if we better understand our bodies, our generation, we're able to educate the next generation because we didn't get that. Not from any fault of like our parents, but they just didn't know. And so now we can really change the narrative about pelvic floor healthcare, that it's something you can be proactive about, that it's not weird. It's just kind of integrated into how we learn to pee and poop is just like we learn to get potty trained or brush our teeth, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, I'm just hearing like from your sharing about this book, like what you really hope that readers take away from this is first off, normalization, right? Like you're not alone in this. There's others. This is relatable. We have information on this. It sounds like they're going to walk away also just with a ton of knowledge and resources on how to better help themselves. And that's one thing that I also adore about the pelvic floor world too, is like you're not in this to keep clients coming back and coming back and coming back. Like you're really teaching them the tools so that they can self-soothe at home, which, not every profession practices. So, yeah.
I know. Yeah, that's true. Like we want to give you the tools to help yourself, you know, and we're here for you.
Mhm.
But I think it's really empowering when you're able to self-treat.
Yeah.
You know, I think one thing to your point that I hope people take away from the book is that one, everyone does have a pelvic floor, every human. Two, that your pelvic floor requires different care for every age and stage. From when you start menstruating, if you've got daughters, so like what they need to know about their pelvic floor, how your hormonal cycle every month affects your pelvic floor, to, pelvic pain and painful sex, to pregnancy, postpartum, birth, and then even perimenopause and menopause. Like, I have some of my aunts or my mom's friends that are like, "Oh, I don't need this because I'm already postmenopausal." I'm like, "Oh no, you especially need it," because I talk about the basics of bladder health and peeing, pooping issues, vulva care. So it's like everybody at every age and stage really needs to know this information. There's no one time that we get to kind of like not worry about it, unfortunately. But I always say it's like your teeth. Like you don't get to fix a cavity and then just stop brushing and flossing. Like there does have to be maintenance and routine that's done, but it's really simple, easy stuff that you can build into your day.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. This has been so great. Thank you again. And I'd love to finish this with like some rapid fire, like fun. Again, you are the owner, you are the vulva costume that I have seen on my reels for so many years now. I'm pretty sure somebody sent me one of your reels and I was like, I gotta follow this woman.
I love
She's wonderful, she's funny,
it.
she's teaching me all the things. So and then in my space, so I work with one of the coaches that I work amongst is doing midlife magic themed calls for the women in our community, in our space. And what I've learned recently, like she puts right on there, midlife magic 36 and up. And I'm like, fuck, like I'm 36. Like, what do you mean this is midlife? And
I know. Isn't that wild?
just, yeah, crazy. Like, I don't want to
I
say,
mean, if you live to your 70, that's midlife, you
I
know?
mean, yeah, I pray like I'm healthy and I live to, 100, but yeah, I don't want to go down like the doom and gloom trail.
I know, same, same. I mean, I'm 42 and I'm thinking, okay, I'm past midlife, but yeah, I remember I was seeing a therapist a couple of years. Oh, I see her on and off, but in New Orleans just for kind of some personal life stuff. And she was like, "Yeah, women in their midlife and and I was like, "Wait, that's me." Like I'm still thinking I'm like in my late 30s and I'm like in my prime, but I was like, "Oh my God, this everything she's saying is what I feel and that is midlife." Kind of just more like how we're making choices for our career, our personal life, our bodies, so everything. But once you kind of embrace that, there's this little, I hope I can curse on here. There's a little bit of like this, I don't give a fuck about the things I used to give a fuck about. Like, you just care a lot less about certain things but care a lot more about the things that matter. Like I care much more about being healthy than being skinny. I care more about using a good sunscreen, than I do about like putting sun in my hair. I mean, you're just so much more thoughtful about the things that are going to give your life like longevity and quality, including pelvic health care. And I think I just really want to be on the front side of that with pelvic floor health for people. Like, how do you proactively take care of your body? Issues can still arise instead of feeling like we're just doing damage control decades later.
Yeah. Yeah. So on that note, like first thing I want to ask in this section is like what is one pelvic floor tip that you wish every person knew by the time they were 30, let's say?
Don't push when you pee. So
Oh,
when you sit down,
yeah.
don't push. Like just sit and breathe, and your bladder is a muscle that pushes the urine out for you.
Yeah.
But if you push, it weakens your pelvic floor over time, and you're peeing 6 to 8 times a day, and that's gonna continuously weaken your muscles. So just sit and chill. Sit. Try not to hover unless it's a really gross bathroom. But sit, lean forward, and just breathe, and don't push or power pee.
Intro. Okay. I
Yes.
something. Yeah, I'm definitely a push. And okay, man, that one threw me for a loop. I was not expecting to say that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just like had this light bulb moment. Okay, my next question is, what is a question that you get commonly in your DMs that brings a smile to your face?
A question I get in my DMs that brings a smile to my face. Where did you get your vulva costume? And I'm like, it was by a company in Brooklyn that doesn't make them anymore.
Oh,
No, I think when people just oh my gosh, questions about they'll ask my kind of what I am, my heritage, where I'm Chinese and Native American, so that's kind of always interesting. They ask me how it is to be a boy mom, which I love because I mean, kids are kids, but I think that I have two sisters and one brother, but I always yeah, kind of know the girl life a little bit better, but have being to a mom to two boys has just been so awesome and I just love them so much and I'm like a super sporty mom with them so that's been really fun. I think I actually like some of the personal questions just outside of pelvic floor health. Just like a little bit of more like get to know you kind of stuff is really fun for me.
yeah, which is so important too, again, in this field, like building connections with people so that they are trusting what it is that you're putting out there to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, last one. This is a finish the sentence. Pelvic floor health is.
Not fitness, not Kegels, not trends is healthcare.
Oh,
It's not
okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
It is healthcare. And I think that there's a lot of like fitness trends out there. There's a lot of devices that are like kind of wellnessy, whether it's a special balm or vibrating tool or infrared light, and some of those can have their places, but this is healthcare, and it's an undertreated area of healthcare. This is what healthcare should encompass, and it isn't yet, but it absolutely needs to be.
Yeah. Mm. And with that, we're gonna mic drop. Like, please give Sarah a follow on Instagram at the Vagina Whisperer. Your new book, Floored, coming out. We can pre-order that. Where do we go? After this that I'm going to get my copy. I have to have
Thank you.
it.
You can pre-order it. I on my website. It's thevagwhisperer.com/floored, and you can pre-order it from any bookstore, indie bookstore, Barnes and Noble's bookshop, which is independent bookstores, Amazon, obviously. And everybody who pre-orders gets 30 days free to my VHI platform. So I want you to be able to not even have to wait for the book to get kind of on your doorstep, that you can just start checking out, some of the relaxation and sexual pain routines or strengthening routines if that's what you want to do. But I really want to kind of make this accessible to everybody. So I'm just super excited to share it with the world.
Oh, and we'll definitely link that again in the show notes for people. So thank you so much for coming on. This was a great conversation. You're a wonderful guest and just a beautiful face to look at. So thank you so much for coming.
Same, Rachel, same. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.